This podcast is sponsored by the Tollington Arms on Hornsey Road, a bubbly pub with a Thai kitchen home to thousands of Arsenal fans every season. Open daily from noon.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another Gooner Ramble. We're coming at you after a week off. We didn't get a pod last week because games on Sunday, and Akhil and I both failed to stay sober enough to podcast. So
yeah,
we're
there
back
was no
this
chance.
week. Yeah, there was no chance.
There was absolutely zero chance of any sort of. I could just about speak, let alone speak sense. Which doesn't happen anyway. But it was even less likely last Sunday.
Yeah, especially after a fabulous North London Derby victory. I stuck around the pub to watch all the other games and partook as well. So neither of us were in any condition to speak sensibly. But we're back now, and we're adding some sense to our podcast with Chloe again. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Not a problem. We will depend on you to be the voice of reason between us.
I'll try.
Okay.
You probably will be, to be fair.
Yeah. Very good. So, Akhil, I'll start with you. We've had 3 games since we last did a podcast. I guess we shouldn't dwell too much on the other 2, maybe focus a little more on Huddersfield, but let me know your quick thoughts on the North London Derby victory and then Manchester United.
Yeah. I mean, I it's one of those where you thought 7 points would be great. You would probably have. I mean, obviously we would have loved 9 points, but I think 7 was the aim. I think, especially after beating Bournemouth as well, we knew that 7 points means kind of 10 points out of 12 from the last 4, and you could see that the players were heavy-legged, especially on Wednesday night at Old Trafford. But I mean, generally, it's been a great week, and I think this week was very important. I mean, considering the kind of 2 games we had at the start of the season against Man City and Chelsea, we played okay at Chelsea at certain times, but generally this was seen as Unai Emery's big test. If we had lost to Spurs at home and then been kind of turned over at Old Trafford, then I think questions again would have been asked, a little bit of Unai Emery and potentially big games. So. The Spurs game generally had it all, didn't it? It completely, it had that kind of element of being one up fairly early, and then we were brought down to earth again. There was kind of scruffles. There was we had just an amazing second half, and I guess my main takeaway from this week actually it hasn't massively been about the performance, or hasn't been about kind of what we've done. I mean, Lucas Torreira has got a lot of headlines, and rightly so, and I think we'll talk about him. And maybe actually the fact that we've done it without Mesut Ozil potentially is there's some sort of importance there. But the thing I've really taken away is how this team is united. And what I mean by that is, that Eric Dyer goal example, as soon as it kind of happened in that corner, whether you were on the pitch, whether you were on the bench, you were in that corner, you were backing your team. There was pushing, there was shoving. I know we shouldn't advocate stuff like that. And, it could go too far. I mean, we remember at Old Trafford many years ago with Ruud van Nistelrooy. That probably was a bit too far, even though I'm glad it happened, because I think it fired us up quite well. But generally, what happened at the North London Derby, I don't think was too far. It was just players showing their fight, showing their passion, and just supporting their teammates. And then even at Old Trafford again, we saw it. We saw it with when Fellaini pulled Guendouzi's hair. We saw it when Marcus Rojo went in on Guendouzi as well. The players were just surrounding the referee. And yesterday we saw it once as well in the first half at Huddersfield. About
Liechtensteiner.
I think so. Something similar where the players were just around the referee and really just having a bit of a go. And again, it's one of those weird things, because you want to have this moral high ground and you want to be this kind of great example. And, only the captain talks to the referee. We're the Arsenal. We're probably the most classiest club in the country. Of course you want all that. But then sometimes you just think, where does that get us? Do nice guys win trophies, win big games, or do teams that are united but fired up win those big games? I think it's the latter. So I think as long as you don't push, you don't go over that line, I think a little bit is good, and I think it really. I saw a visible difference after incidents like that happened. Our performance straight after it for the next 10, 15 minutes were such that you could tell this team was fired up, and I think it helps having Unai Emery on the sidelines as well. I mean, the guy he just doesn't sit down. He's always there with instructions. He's very passionate, waving his arms around and stuff like that. He's got a complete different style to kind of what we've had previous. And I think that's great. I think him and his assistant, he's obviously got two assistants, but one of them, they have a bit of a set routine. I don't know if you've noticed, but when we're defending set pieces, Unai Emery always sits down. And his assistant is the one organising. And as soon as we've cleared it, they swap again. And I just think all this works. And, currently it's really enjoyable watching Arsenal because you feel that we're not going to go down without a fight. And I think 20 games, 21 games, whatever it is, unbeaten shows that.
Yeah. And, Chloe, your thoughts on taking 7 points from these 3 games?
I'm actually really pleased overall, really to echo some of what Akhil has said. If you'd have said we'd get 7 from those 3 fixtures, I'd have been more than happy. And I think when you actually consider the way that it's all played out, because the derby was such a huge game, and I cannot remember the last time that the Emirates rocked like that. In fact, I question whether it ever actually has rocked like that. Willing to be corrected, but it just felt like an absolute fortress. It was an awesome atmosphere. Everybody was behind us, behind the players. And even when things weren't going our way, I was so optimistic and so confident. And I just felt that we were definitely going to beat them. And I was in absolutely no doubt. And then to have the United game follow so quickly afterwards, and there's all the media pressure, there's all of the press coverage about, this is such a big fixture. It's the first real big test for Emery. And that's a lot of pressure. And I think in recent seasons, we've kind of seen how we've buckled under a bit of mental pressure. And it feels like we just ground that result out. Ultimately, I think we played better than they did. And I think certainly towards the end of the game, De Gea kept them in that draw. And I think we could have beaten them if luck had been a bit further on our side. Yeah. But then what was really important to me going into yesterday was I did have a little niggle. I'm not going to lie. I tried to be optimistic. But that little bit of doubt came in the whole, are we going to Arsenal this up? Because Huddersfield at home, when you are 20 unbeaten, the Arsenal of old, that could be actually when you falter. And we didn't. We absolutely dug out that result. Very, very grueling game. And I think it's been very physical over the last week. As you say, nice guys were probably perceived as that. We've definitely got more passion. And I think the key difference for us, though, is that we are still professional and we're still respectful. We are reacting to the way that other teams come at us. And we're not actually coming at it that's our tactic to play dirty. But if teams start playing dirty with us now, what I'm thinking is really positive is that we're not afraid to stand up for ourselves and we're not willing to be bullied. And that, I think, is a real step forward.
Yeah, that's been noticeable, especially by some of the new additions, Socrates and Lichtensteiner. Standing up for their teammates, even when they're not on the pitch. Stefan igniting that little corner scuffle.
Yeah, and you're spot on there. He was on that corner and he was straight in, he was completely straight in. And Socrates is a real leader as well, actually. When you see him play, he's not afraid to have a go at people. His own team, his who he's facing, the referee, he is not afraid to say what he thinks, and I think that's great because I remember, I think it probably was the North London derby where he he was really going off at Rob Holding for not being in the right position, and it was kind of one of those things that Rob Holding knew he wasn't in the right position and kind of admitted it, and that was it, kind of thing. Socrates had his say, Holding kind of put his hands up, and then that was it. We moved on, but there isn't that kind of not sort of being afraid to kind of voice your opinion. It seems like this team, everyone's happy to voice their opinion, whether you're kind of 30 plus at Petr Cech or Lichtenstein or Socrates, or whether you're Matteo Guendouzi, for example, at 19. It's just, that's what I really like about this team at the moment.
Yeah, and the players who are getting that message are not barking back, which used to be the case with some players, where you would see a veteran give a rookie some feedback, so to speak, and the rookie barking back at him. And what I have noticed is that's not happening anymore.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine giving Alexis Sanchez a bit of a telling off? Can you imagine what the reaction would be? You know,
Yeah.
He'll probably.
And I don't think you dare because of that.
Exactly.
That'd be your concern, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, we have had it with, Per Mertesacker giving it to Ozil and stuff, but I think that was more because of they're both German, they had a relationship and stuff like that. So we've seen it a little bit, but here it just feels like you can be anyone and talk to anyone sort of thing, and I just like the fact that it's quite open.
Yeah, very much so. So let's touch on Huddersfield a little bit. It was one of those games that we really had to dig out a result. Missed a few chances in the first half that you would have bet would have been goals for Lacazette and Aubameyang. But let's go back to Chloe for a second. Just on the more recent game, what did you see in that game that helped us dig out the victory?
I think for me, it was around the spirit and picking up on some of what's already been said, the fact that people aren't afraid to lead now. And I think that is a true sign of a team who are comfortable working together and they're willing to take, that feedback, swallow it if it's fair and just crack on. And there's not the egos, I think, probably across the team that perhaps in certain areas there has been historically. But I do think as well, it's just that ability to grind out a result, because Huddersfield didn't really come with much, let's be honest. They would have been very happy with a draw. In fact, they probably would have been ecstatic with a draw. And the fact that we kept pushing, I did think we're a bit tired towards the end, possibly put our heads down a little bit, which has been something that hasn't been quite so prevalent over recent weeks and has definitely for me been a key difference, and we've just kept going. But you can't blame them with the run of games that we've had. And I think it was just the fact that despite all of that, they were able to just keep pushing. And I'm sure we're going to talk about him in more detail, but you can't take it away from Lucas either, because he is just absolutely awesome at the moment and has been a breath of fresh air, in my opinion, since he came into the squad. And, he's very combative, which obviously over these last few games has been key, as we've touched on. But now it's like he's an attacking force as well. And, he proved it absolutely yesterday.
Absolutely. If not for a phenomenal save from the keeper, he might have had a brace.
I think what I like about kind of at the moment is how Unai Emery's not afraid to kind of change things up at half time. And I actually think 2 weeks in a row at home, he has been the difference, Unai Emery. He against Spurs, I know we're talking about Huddersfield, but against Spurs, that kind of Ramsey Lacazette changes for Iwobi and Mkhitaryan totally changed the game, and we just came out firing. And again here, actually, when I looked at that team, I did think, wow, that's going to be interesting. You've got two up front who are great. But service-wise, there's not that. I don't know. There wasn't the Ozil or the Ramsey or the Mkhitaryan or Iwobi kind of flair player in that. So I thought that we are going to rely on Hector Bellerin and Sead Kolasinac a lot here, because they will have to provide width and they will actually have to provide service, because in Lucas, Matteo Guendouzi and Xhaka, you'll get some neat passing, you'll get some, good football, but are they going to be able to kind of find that little bit extra 10% and do something creative? Potentially Torreira is starting to, but I wasn't sure, and it kind of showed in that first half where we just looked a little bit. It wasn't quite happening for us. Aubameyang had that chance from the Xhaka kind of, I don't know if it was a shot or a pass or whatever it was when he missed it. I think Lacazette scored a legitimate goal that should not have been ruled offside, but hey.
I agree.
Yeah.
So we had chances, but it wasn't free flowing. You didn't feel like we were, everything seemed a little bit difficult. It wasn't, nothing was really easy. And then obviously the subs happened, and you just had a little bit of, Iwobi and Mkhitaryan who could bring the ball, and that transition from midfield to attack looked a little bit smoother. But again, Unai Emery's not scared to react. He's not going to wait until the second half or anything like that. So that for me was the most promising.
And I think also that's possibly why we are seeing, those relationships between the players during the game, because probably a little bit of an extreme statement, but essentially no one's position is safe. And I think that's bringing an extra edge. And so there aren't going to be toddler tantrums if someone says something that perhaps you don't quite agree with in the moment, but ultimately they're doing it for the good of the team, for the good of the result, and what you're trying to achieve together. And I think that the way that Emery is playing it with these subs is also starting to harbour that across them.
Yeah. I think the whole thing about kind of no one's position is safe is spot on. And you look at this week and you think Mesut Ozil's been injured or hasn't played since Bournemouth, but has been injured for a week. And actually we haven't missed him. And when he is fit, I'm not sure he's just going to be able to walk straight in. I think he may sit on the bench a little while and have to wait for his chance. And I think that's obviously a good thing. Whereas you think back to, again, previous years, we tried to drop Alexis Sanchez when he had kind of done that storming out in training and things like that. We went to Anfield, he was on the bench, but we were 2-0 down and we had to then bring him on because we wanted him to change the game. So again, when you kind of don't play players or players don't feel that they're safe, it brings out maybe the best out of everyone. Whereas at that time, you just felt that we're kind of dropping him because we're trying to punish him, but we weren't confident we could win without him, and we all knew he would come back in as soon as we need him, he would come back in. Whereas at the moment, I'm not sure if Mesut Ozil will come back into this team straight away because why would he? The others are doing pretty well. So I think that's a good thing, and it's making everyone, every player believes that if they train hard and when they get chances, they perform well, that they will be in this team. I mean, Aaron Ramsey's out of contract in a few months, yet he came on. He's obviously been professional in training, came on against Spurs, had a great second half, storming second half. What happened? He started on Wednesday at Old Trafford, and that's someone out of contract, So if I think all the players are looking and thinking, if I perform well, I will be in that team, which is absolutely great, and I think it's motivating them all.
Yeah, and I was wondering too if these substitutions he's been doing the last several games is because we have a lot of games coming up. I mean, we just had 3 in a week, and it's not stopping, right? We got a few more weeks of this going on, and I think he's playing it very wisely with all those substitutions.
Yeah. I mean, I'll twist that question sort of back to you and say there's 2 weeks in a row we've had half-time subs that have been absolutely genius and changed the game. Does that actually mean he's getting it wrong at the start? I'm not saying he is. I'm just twisting playing devil's advocate. It's a question for both of you, actually.
I don't know that he's getting it wrong at the start. Obviously, we did see a difference at the North London Derby. But I didn't see a dramatic first half, second half difference from the wings in Huddersfield game. I just think he's doing it to challenge the players so they don't feel safe, so they do give a performance. I don't know that, and he's also done it with the same players, swapping, Mkhitaryan and Iwobi kind of come in and out at the same time. I don't know if he's trying to, create some partnerships and some knowledge with one another. I don't know.
I think because they're the flair players, they're always the players that need to make that difference offensively. I think between them two, Ozil, Ramsey, I think they're your flair players, which is kind of why it's happening. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. If Kolasinac doesn't do what he's meant to be doing offensively, will Monreal come on for him at half time? I mean, Monreal might have to start the next couple of games with injuries and suspensions, but it'll be interesting to see, does that happen in kind of other places? And I'm not sure what Chloe thinks on that.
I'm with Rick on this because I don't feel that he's getting it wrong. And I think what you say as well is spot on, Akhil, in the sense of it is those flair players, and they are coming on and they are actually making the difference. And they're switching it straight on. And we've even seen that recently with Lacazette when he's come off the bench. And I think that I'd love to believe that, he's got this amazing strategy and that actually this is all deliberate and he just does it to sort of make teams think that we're not quite as good as we are becoming. But I genuinely think that he puts his decisions in place and then he's not afraid to make a change if it's not working. Because I think what we also have to bear in mind is that players can have an off day. Formations that look great on paper and have worked well on the training ground, when you're actually then up against those opponents, don't always pan out as you're expecting them to. And I think the key difference is that, historically, we'd have just carried on, keep trying to play in that exact same way before Emery. And it's really refreshing that he has, got the confidence to make those changes. And again, I think it's that culture that he's cultivating means that actually doesn't appear to be having a detrimental effect on anyone's motivation, or performance ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, for the record, I think he's a genius. I was just.
Yeah, you were posing the question. Yeah,
fair.
Yeah, the next thing, Akhil, we need to really probably talk about is not only did Huddersfield not perform well, they brought their kicking boots with them. They kicked us all over the pitch in the first half. Don't know if that's what led to the injuries we got, but we got suspensions as well. So what are your thoughts on the next couple of games, giving the injuries we have, the suspensions we have to serve? It's going to get a little tricky, isn't it?
It is. It'll be interesting to see if he continues with 3 at the back. Was he doing it? I mean, my theory there, I think we talked about the other week, was it was more around protecting Kolasinac. I think he's more of a wing back than a full back, even though he did have a very good game against Liverpool, by the way, in a 4. But generally, we've seen the best of him when he's a wing back. I think we have the midfielders where we can cover. We have our 2 kind of holding players in terms of Xhaka and Torreira or Guendouzi. So I think that's probably why he's done it. With Monreal back, potentially could be tempted to go back to a 4 with Monreal playing left back. And then Socrates would, I guess, play. We've lost Holding. We've lost Mustafi through potentially an injury, but also suspension. So yeah, who's going to play alongside? It's probably a little bit too early for Koscielny. I don't know if we might see Koscielny on Thursday night potentially. I very much doubt we'll see him sort of 2 games in 4 days. So
right.
Yeah, maybe Monreal might be forced to play centre back. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. He will have to tinker a little bit around. Liechtenstein can obviously play as part of a 3 at the back. Can he play part of a 4? I don't know. Maybe he could. Maybe he couldn't. So there's a lot of questions there. I think in this week in training, Emery will be tinkering around with that. He'll be thinking, can so and so play in a 4? Are they better in a 5? And then kind of see where we go from there.
Yeah, it is going to be tough. I know Southampton's not on a good run of form right now, but it's never an easy away game.
They've just got a new manager as well, so
exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of mention that as well. Yeah, they're going to perk up and try to prove themselves for the new manager. So, Chloe, given that both Mustafi and Socrates are out for the Southampton game, what do you think we're going to be able to do at the back?
So I don't think we've got very many options, as we've highlighted. But having said that, we were always going to hit a patch where potentially injuries and or suspensions are going to be a challenge. It's really frustrating that we're kind of being hit by both at once. But I just think that we're going to have to get Monreal back in, quite frankly. And I think that's a good shout, actually, about whether Cos could play on Thursday. Potentially it's a less pressured environment. Even if he isn't able to do a full 90 minutes, just to sort of ease him back in.
Yeah.
We have, of course, got Mavropanos. He hasn't had a huge number of minutes for us as yet, but
he's been injured. He's been injured as
well.
Yeah,
and I wasn't sure whether he was back from that. Obviously, if he is, then he's another option. And you probably tell by the way that I'm answering the question, none of those feel to me like the absolute answer. And I think you're right. I think they're just going to have to try some stuff out this week, see where people are in terms of, their ability to come back. It's not ideal, but ultimately, this is a challenge. We're kind of going to be over the issue around, are we actually going to be able to win the big games? And I think we're, starting to tick those boxes. This is the other challenge. And of course, dare I say it, we're coming up to Christmas, most wonderful time of the year, unless you're an Arsenal fan, historically.
True. Yeah, we're going to be going down there rather thin at the back, and throw out a couple names that have played there before, some very recently. Carl Jenkinson, still with the team, could see some minutes at Southampton.
Yeah.
El Nene's been back there before. I mean, we got to find somebody to put back there. I don't know what you guys' thoughts on it's confusion at this point, I guess. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah. I mean, El Nene's played there before. He hasn't He doesn't seem like he's quite fancied. He
No,
hasn't
not at
really
all.
got many. We'll probably see him on Thursday, but I mean, on Thursday you would expect 11 changes, purely because we are top of the group. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think we'll be wrapping up kind of Socrates, Bellerin, well, potentially, I don't know. There's that dilemma with someone like Monreal, that does he actually need the minutes, or should we be not playing him? It depends how he is physically. Kolasinac probably will be taken out as well. He's played a lot, by the way, since he's come back from his injury. So
Yeah.
I think we'll see a little bit. You know, we might see a few kind of the younger lads play alongside maybe Koscielny.
Yeah, I apologize. All my questions have been about Southampton. I have just completely dismissed that Thursday game because it really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
You're right. So you're right. We might see a complete new 11 there.
Yeah, I think we will.
Okay. Another thing that I heard in the pub over here in St. Louis watching the game, we talked a little bit about Mesut Ozil being out, quote, injured, unquote. I did hear a few times, and I even said myself, maybe this is a game where we need Mesut Ozil because we were struggling breaking them down. What are your thoughts on his situation right now, Akhil? I mean, he seems like he's still around the club, but he's not even on the bench. He's not even in the lineup. What do you think's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he went to Bournemouth and was on the bench, and that was kind of a big, a bit of a statement. And then Unai Emery afterwards did say something about physical away games and things like that. I mean, sometimes you know, I was a massive fan of watching Arsene Wenger press conferences because I always felt I learned something. I think when you've had a manager for 22 years, you sort of train yourself where you know when he's lying or whether he's telling the truth. And when I say lying, I mean kind of, you know, because he was talking to the press, he wasn't talking to fans. So you kind of trained yourself that you knew that, actually, there's a little bit of a glint there when he said Koscielny's out. I think he may make it. And, you know, but with Unai Emery, I'm not really, I love watching Unai Emery on the sidelines, but I don't particularly like listening to him because I feel he says a lot but doesn't answer much. He doesn't actually give you much information. And with Mesut Ozil, I don't know again if it was a language barrier, but he was asked about Mesut Ozil, I think after Old Trafford, and kind of, you know, or maybe even after Spurs, and he kind of said he doesn't know if Ozil was there, and he got a back injury but doesn't know when. It was all a little bit weird. It was more about, I don't know, it's just, you know, if you don't know where Mesut Ozil was, just lie and say you do know where he is. It was a bit strange. So I don't know with Mesut Ozil. I think, you know, if we look at the kind of the facts as we know them, he's on around sort of 300 to 350k a week. He signed the contract last January after kind of months and months of speculation. But in that time, we didn't hear those kind of really strong, fierce rumours about him being linked with teams like we did with Alexis Sanchez and Man City, for example.
Right.
We didn't get that with Mesut Ozil, which makes me think, is there interest? You know, was there big interest? He's now a year older. So he's now, you know, 30. He's on big money. You know, are there clubs out there that are actually going to want a Mesut Ozil? So I think in terms of his future, I think potentially there won't be many clubs that will want to, you know, invest in a 30-year-old at that kind of level. So then kind of begs the question that what's his future at Arsenal? I certainly think he has a future at Arsenal. I don't think it's a case of, you know, sort of Mesut Ozil doesn't. I think it's just a case of he'll have to work hard to get back in. Like every other player, I don't think he'll be treated any differently. But I think he's such a quality player. I just think it's if Unai Emery could get him to be a bit more consistent, I think we would have an even better player on our hands, because on his day, he's our best player. He can, I mean, yeah, you talked about yesterday missing someone like Mesut Ozil, and I thought about that Leicester game we had on a Monday night where we went 1-0 down, and you just felt, this is a bit of a banana skin, but Mesut Ozil just turned it on. He scored a goal, got an assist. He was fantastic that night. So he's definitely got, you know, bags of skill and ability. But I just think it's kind of get fit again, work hard in training, and then when you get your chance, sort of take it. I think over a busy Christmas period, I think every player will be needed, every single player. So I don't fear for his future or anything like that. I just think that it's a real shift now. We've got players who are great players, but are not safe. You think of Aubameyang and Lacazette. Either of them could play up front, and they're both £50 million players, but neither of them probably feel totally safe. So that it's a good thing, and hopefully we'll get the best out of Mesut.
Yeah, I think he's got a future as well, because I think he's just that kind of a sensitive soul. He's finding difficulty getting motivated all the time. Just one of those people that sometimes just tunes out based on his personality, and I think maybe Emery's just trying to figure that out. I don't think Arsene Wenger ever figured it out either. But Chloe, he's also on a lot of money, and I think that limits his mobility if we were going to ship him out. Do you really think he's going to leave, or do you think he's got a future here?
I like to think that he's got a future with us, but I think that he has become this, £350,000 a player a week, and that's kind of round his neck. And I think that it's quite easy to sort of use that as motivation to get at him and to be critical of him, certainly in the media. But I also think that he has divided football fans and divided Arsenal fans, to be fair, particularly over the last couple of years. One of my little viewpoints is that when you've got a world-class player, and I consider Ozil to be in that category, they are going to have periods of time where they're, not as good as you expect them to be. But then they're going to do stuff like, say, Akhil, that game against Leicester, where they are just so sublimely unbelievable, creating those chances, being right in the thick of the action, and ultimately being the reason that you get the result you get. And because of that, I'm willing to overlook a little bit of, a lacking of consistency. I think the difficulty is that he appears to be unmotivated at the moment, and picking up on what you said, Rick, about him being a sensitive soul, which I think could be the case, but it's almost as though that then comes across, and then when you've got someone who's on that kind of money, naturally certain fractions will sort of start to get behind that. I don't think he has got many options. He'd certainly be expected to take a pay cut, I would have thought, and on the basis that he has been with us on that money for the time that he has, you'd expect that he'd want to see that out. But as we've said earlier, there's a shift at Arsenal, because we aren't going to guarantee players places. They've got to work for it. They've got to be up for it. And I'm hoping that he's going to come out the other side of this, because on his day, he's awesome to watch. And when you think, officially he's an attacking midfielder, he's scored about 41 goals over 200 games. That's not bad going for a player in that position. And I think it can be easy to miss that, because he has become a figure, particularly across the internet, that people are divided. He's like Marmite, isn't he? People either love him or hate him. There doesn't seem to be any middle ground. And I do think that that's a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's not going to be on top of his game all of the time. And I think the money and the fact that he is our main guy gets a spotlight on him that probably just does not serve his personality well. Might be good if he could just, hide in the shadows a little bit, maybe, I don't know. But somebody who is picking up a few more goals out of midfield recently, Akhil, has been Torreira.
He's a dream. He's an absolute dream, is Lucas Torreira. I just think it's very easy for us to say he's been exactly what we've wanted for years, and, since Patrick Vieira and all that kind of stuff. But if you just take a step back, it's so much more than that. It's around... not only can he control a midfield, not only is he good back to goal, not only can he tackle, not only can he kind of cover box to box, not only can he shoot, he's just got it all. He's got leadership as well. He's a fighter. He's not. He just, he refuses to lose a little bit. And for years, or certainly for the last 3 or 4 years, everyone's looked at N'Golo Kante as that kind of dream midfielder kind of thing. But I think we've got one just as good in Lucas Torreira. I think his kind of the impact he's had to Arsenal. I can't think of many players in the last sort of 10, 15 years that have made an impact this quickly. So you think of all our greats, Thierry Henry, Patrick Vieira, Robert Pires, Dennis Bergkamp. They all took a little while to settle in. Mm-hmm. I think Gilberto started well, but then did have an injury. So, I think someone like Laurent Koscielny actually did kind of settle in well. Obviously, Aubameyang has, with sort of 20 odd goals in 25 games, whatever it is. But there's something about Torreira that he's just settled in there, and you would think he's actually the first name on our team sheet. You think if Aubameyang doesn't play, Lacazette will, and Lacazette can score. But if Torreira doesn't play, you just feel there's nobody else that can do that role. I think he's built a good partnership with Granit Xhaka. He's made Granit Xhaka look like a real player. Now we're suddenly not talking about Granit Xhaka anymore. He divided a lot of opinions, but actually right now he's just getting on with his job, and I think Torreira is helping that. So, I think everything about him is just a dream. I think fans love him. I just was looking at him coming to us at Old Trafford, coming to the away end at Old Trafford. Everyone's singing. He's kind of he looks like he's enjoying himself a lot. He's recently talked about how kind of the fan support and the atmosphere last Sunday in the North London derby, how much of an impact that had. I just think he's also feeling, the love from Arsenal fans, and maybe even he's starting to fall in love with Arsenal. So, I just think he's such a star, and I'm so glad we've got him. I mean, if he's not the signing of the season, and I'll tell you what, if Arsenal do finish in the top 4, do have a good season, then he must be a shout to be Player of the Year as well. I certainly think he'll be up there with the likes of, Sterling and Salah and co. But he's just been absolute class.
Yeah, if he stays at this pace, you're right. He's in the conversation for all of those accolades. So we'll move over to Chloe, get a little chat about Torreira as well. But Akhil, you mentioned the people that came in and made an impact this quickly. You mentioned Aubameyang, people like that were veteran players that came here established. Torreira is only 22 years old, Chloe, and the best might be yet to come. What do you think of this guy?
Oh, I think the best is still yet to come, and that's really exciting. I think I said earlier, he's very combative, which I think we've seen from the off. But what is great now is that he's actually also this attacking force, and he's just got that passion and that hunger. But I think alongside that, he's quite humble. And I think that is the difference, because he's taken the opportunity. He's absolutely giving it 120% every game. He's buzzing off the atmosphere and the reaction that he gets from the fans, because he's not got an ego, or at least doesn't appear to have an ego. And I think part of that is probably because he is still young, and this is really his, sort of real taste of being in this sort of situation. And I just think it's really refreshing to see, because again, I stand behind. I think it's all part of the culture that's being cultivated by Emery. He knows that he's not guaranteed that place on the pitch. He knows he's got to work hard for it. And I think you're right, Akhil. You can feel that he's becoming an Arsenal fan. You can definitely feel that, the passion that he's got, ripping the shirt off, because he understood how important that goal was last week. He knows how important that goal was yesterday. And I think that, the best is definitely yet to come, which is incredibly exciting.
Yeah, I think he's been outstanding, exceeded all expectations. I think, as most of us admittedly knew nothing about him. So I guess it's easy to exceed those expectations, but this has been a gem of a signing.
I think it was watching him in the World Cup got me excited. I didn't know much about him before that, admittedly, but saw him in that World Cup, and I just thought, this kid has something. This kid really has something, and I don't think I expected him to settle in this quickly, but I thought, I got the sense that this boy's a player, but I didn't expect him to be. He's 10 times more than I thought he was. He's just, as I said, he covers so much more. He's a leader. He's kind of got a bit of everything. We've tried so many players in those positions. He's got a little bit of the leadership from Flamini. He's got the covering ground from Coquelin. He's got the knowing where to be positionally like Gilberto. He's a bit of a box to box and can cover ground like Ramsey. He can, he's got a bit of, he's very good on the ball as well, like Wilshere or Santi Cazorla, so he's got like bits of everyone and he's just rolled into one. He's just, for someone who's only 5 foot high, as the song goes, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and Chloe mentioned too the atmosphere that Emery is setting up and getting these players motivated and playing like this has been fantastic. Yeah. One of the things I've noticed as we talk about how we feel about the current state of the team, let me just talk a little bit about. I think Emery has set a bit of a different tone for the team than what we had under Arsene Wenger, and what I mean by that is when Mateo got his hair pulled, he just made a joke about it, right? Maybe Mateo needs to cut his hair. Problem solved. So he's joking about incidents that you would think if that had happened under Arsene Wenger, he would be vilifying the other player for doing such a thing. And the focus would have been on that instead of, and I love Arsene Wenger and I loved his philosophy about football, but when he saw injustice, he expected somebody else to do something about it. Whereas Emery, I think, is just taking it on and saying, we just have to be better. And I think it was that kind of, him setting that tone kind of helps us get through games like we just did against Huddersfield, where the old Arsenal might have just ended up in a 0-0 draw.
Yeah. No, he's certainly adding, maybe he has got that sort of, let's look at our self-philosophy rather than blame other things and things like that. And you see him, at the fourth official a lot less than, say, Arsene Wenger, although with the Lacazette goal, he did actually lose it. Yeah. But like generally, I think it's a little bit of a different culture, which I think this club needed. This club absolutely needed it, and it's working. So long may it continue.
So what is your current mood about the team? What do you, how are you feeling right now?
No, nothing's really changed from a few weeks ago. I said that I think that the way to measure it is start of the season. Our expectations weren't high. We were saying give him a free year, and then maybe we start judging him after a few transfer windows. But now we're saying we could make this top 4. We've now, this week was a big week. We've got 7 points out of it. We're sitting pretty. Expectations are now, I think, top 4 for sure. And I think that shows you how far we've come under Unai Emery. So, absolutely buzzing. Can't wait to go to games, to watch our club play, and just kind of really excited for kind of big games to come. I'm no longer fearing going to Anfield end of December, for example, like I would have been kind of previous. And I just say bring it on now, So it's definitely a level of excitement for me.
Yeah, and Chloe, what do you think of the Emery, I guess we call it evolution, not revolution?
So very similar, actually. I feel that excitement is back, and I'm also loving the way that the fans are united again, because something that I really struggled with towards the end of Wenger's tenure was the way that the fans were split, and it got very toxic at times. And it's great now that everybody is behind the team. That has disappeared. Okay, I think it still does exist in factions on the internet, but when you're actually at a game, everybody's there being positive and optimistic, and then that is driving the players on, and they're performing, and so that keeps us all positive and optimistic. And I think I've never felt this confident going into a Christmas run of games, and we have got a tough run of games coming up. I think we've got 4 games in 10 days, which is a big ask. And obviously we've got Liverpool at the end of the month, and we've got the Spurs game nestled somewhere amongst that. And I think that we all truly believe that anything is possible, and we can get the results that we would want from those games. Whereas you think back to sort of a year ago, and you were kind of, yesterday I would have been thinking, Huddersfield home, sadly the chances are they'll nick a goal and that'll be it all over, and it's just gone completely the opposite direction, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I guess the brush of fresh air leads to a little renewed confidence, and I think also, Akhil, it's been better in the ground as well, the fan support, right?
Yeah, it has. I mean, the atmosphere has been, it was a bit flat yesterday, but I think that's because we've had a tough long week. But yeah, that Spurs game was as good as the Emirates Stadium's been. I think people sort of described it as maybe the best atmosphere at the Emirates. And, I don't know, maybe they're right. We've had a few. I think of the 5-2s against Spurs, especially the first one being 2-0 down, and when Van Persie equalised, it was just amazing. And it was very similar to that on last Sunday. So, yeah, I generally think there's a kind of there's a support there, and I maybe last season 0-0 Huddersfield at half time would there be about a 10% kind of 10% fans booing potentially at half time? I don't know, maybe. But it's just, everything's positive at the moment, and I think fans are kind of enjoying it, and just enjoying their football again, which is great.
Yeah, that's good.
I think also, just to go back to the fourth place point, is that I don't think any fan would have expected that we could be actually within a chance of getting fourth place this season. Being realistic, new manager, take time to bed in, etc. And the fact that we're now in the position where we genuinely feel that that's what we can achieve, but then we'll be building on that. Whereas historically, it's always been that whole, are we just playing for fourth place? But actually now it feels like we're playing to do more, and we're going to get fourth place this year, and then we're going to build on that in years to come. And that for me is also the shift.
Yep, it feels good. I agree. I think top four is attainable, and I think we're excited by that.
Yeah, it's very much a project that Unai Emery's got, and I think the first step of that project is to get Arsenal back into the Champions League. So potentially we can attract more players. We get that sort of 40 to 50 million revenue from the Champions League, and then the step after that would be 2 or 3 windows, build his own squad. Potentially develop a few of the players that he wants to develop, and then it's kind of compete for the league, and then followed by hopefully winning the league, which would be the ultimate. So I think it's certainly a 3, 4, 5 year project, and I think step one is just get back in the Champions League, do it regularly for a season or two again, and then look up again.
All right. Well, that's 3 for 3 on optimism. I like it. There is something we do need to discuss, a larger issue amongst not just Arsenal, but football in general. We had, and we didn't get a chance to talk about it because we were too drunk to do a podcast last week, but Aubameyang got a banana skin thrown at him. And then this week, Raheem Sterling got some racist abuse shouted at him by Chelsea fans. And these incidents, obviously, they're in the media right now. Everybody's talking about them. Akhil, do you have thoughts on these events or anything you want to share from your experiences?
Well, I mean, the Aubameyang one, I don't think and I certainly didn't know it happened until probably the following day, really, because as I said, I was a little bit too,
you were enjoying the day.
Yeah, I was enjoying the day a bit too much to watch the highlights again. But so, it was only until the next day. And I think, we've seen now pictures of the fan, and we've heard the excuses and all that kind of stuff. And with the Sterling one, again, I haven't really seen it again. I did see on social media that there was kind of questions around, was he saying kind of Manc, as in, Manchester, rather than kind of, black, potentially. I don't know what he was saying. But there's a bit of there's a cloud there that people aren't sure what the fan was actually saying. I did see Raheem Sterling's post on Instagram. I thought was a great post. I think he used real life examples as well. So it's one of those that I think it certainly happens. Probably more in Europe, but it probably does happen here as well. And it's not great, that you don't want that. You want football generally to be inclusive, and whether that's kind of people from all cultures or races, whether it's, it doesn't matter on your gender, your age, everything. You kind of want it to be open. You want, old and young, families, non-families, everyone to feel welcome. So I think generally at Arsenal people do, and I think Arsenal is we have a great kind of diverse fan base, which is great. But have I seen things? Yeah, I probably have. I've seen things on kind of trains and stuff. I remember one particular train journey from Norwich where, there were Arsenal fans and they had been at the game, kind of same as me, and were chanting some kind of, racist stuff on the way back. And there was a couple of other people on the carriage who weren't football fans, and they did get a little bit of abuse thrown at them, which, it made me as an ethnic minority feel very uncomfortable. There was about 7 or 8 of them. I knew one of them just from going to matches, and I did have a bit of a word, but it was kind of they weren't going to change, and I just had to kind of move carriages. I just thought, I don't want to be associated with this. We're all Arsenal there. As people looking at us will think, are we all the same? Which we're not. So, I've seen a little bit of that, but generally I haven't seen much when following Arsenal, which is obviously great.
Yeah. Chloe, any experiences on your end, or any comments you want to make?
I think just very similar really to what's been said. I think that Arsenal has always been very inclusive in my experience, and we've got diversity in terms of the fan base, but also when you think how fantastically our women's teams have done, the diverse players that we've had in our teams for the last 20-30 years, and sadly there are still small fractions who aren't as open to different cultures and racism, etc. And I just think it's disgraceful, really, that in this day and age that it does still go on. But sadly it does. And I think actually that Sterling's way of handling this has been pretty impressive. And I think what's also good is it is raising awareness, because it's interesting that it comes at a time where there was the Ian Wright documentary a couple of weeks ago about racism, from years ago. And to be honest, because some of that happened before I actually started going to watch football, I hadn't appreciated just how awful it had been. And you think for players to play and perform in that sort of adversity is absolutely, unbelievable that they could still motivate themselves to go and score goals and play for their team and put the shirt on. And I think it is a minority, but
sure,
whilst whilst it's in the news a lot at the moment, hopefully it will raise awareness, and then where there perhaps it does occur, people will be less tolerant of it as observers.
Yeah. And I know over here on the NBC Sports network, Rebecca Lowe and Robbie Earle had a little segment on it, and Robbie Earle was talking about how, we thought we had made this tremendous amount of progress with racism in football, and then here, boom, just almost out of nowhere, we have back-to-back issues, and he was really a little bit emotional talking about it. I'd recommend anybody, check out that clip from NBC Sports about that. But I'm wondering too, and sorry, I was just thinking just now, actually, the fact that it's come up. I mean, it's always been there. There's always been this deep-seated, this very minor minority of people that feel this way. But it seems, and I'm wondering if they've become emboldened in their outlook, because there's cameras. They know they're going to get caught. They're still doing it anyway. And we've had issues over here in the U.S., Charlottesville more recently, that let me go back to that tone. I talked about how Emery set the tone for Arsenal. I'm wondering if there's a tone being set in our respective countries. You guys had Brexit. We regardless of what politics you think, we got Trump in the office, where the very divisive mechanisms. And I'm wondering if it's that tone that's being set that's leading people to become more emboldened in these minority views.
Yeah, I mean, that's what actually I was about to say. I think it's a bigger issue than just football,
right?
And it's talking to kind of Henry Winter on our podcast actually about 6 weeks ago. We weren't talking about racism, but we were talking about kind of mental health. Mm-hmm. And I asked him that if in football we could do more, and how should ex-footballers be supported, and he said it's so much bigger than that. It's in everyday life, whether you're a footballer or whether you're not a footballer, you may suffer with mental health, and regardless, everyone needs help and deserves help. And I think it's the same with racism, isn't it? I mean, you have things that happen in a football ground. It's weird. I mean, you talk about the cameras and stuff, but it always feels like in a football ground, some people feel that it's not real life, and you can sort of do what you want. I mean, we're all kind of slightly kind
safety of the crowd, maybe.
Yeah, safety of the crowd, but we're all kind of, I think, guilty of it at times. I don't mean the extremeness of racism or anything like that. But I mean, yesterday, for example, when that lino raised his flag and Lacazette's goal didn't stand, I did kind of shout at the lino and say, tell him to put his glasses on and what's he doing in this job if he can't, kind of see a simple thing that's right in front of him. And if he can't do his job properly, he should probably kind of retire. But you wouldn't say that to someone on the street. You wouldn't just start shouting to the lollipop man or something like that, saying, "Didn't you just see there was a child trying to cross?" You wouldn't do that. So it's weird that in a football ground you do just feel that it's not real life. And I remember Arsene Wenger at Stoke said something about he used to get a lot of abuse at Stoke City, and he kind of in a press conference just said that I would love someone to take a photo of these fans behind me that are just shouting abuse, give them the photo, let them go home and show it to their children, and that would make them not do it again, is what Arsene Wenger said, because he would think that they would be embarrassed to show that to their children. And it's true, because you wouldn't do a lot of that on the street. So I think football in that way, there is it's a little bit weird, but then obviously you take that kind of, a little bit of abuse to the lino to racism to a player or something like that, and it's completely different. And I think, you're right. It's a bigger problem than that. And, we've had Brexit here, and Brexit that it has brought, without going too political, we have seen examples of things happening to people, which has been triggered by Brexit. So it's certainly a worldwide issue, not just football, but it just feels that people think at football games they're a little bit more, they won't get caught, or they can get away with it, and they do it because it's this make-believe world. So I think people, the problem from outside does come into football, because I think of that, safety net people think they have.
Yeah, and it's good that we're, shining a big bright light on this, because I think once you do that, people will adjust, they will adapt, right? Let's just hope we do more of it.
And you know what, bringing that back to Arsenal, I mean, we're actually, through the Supporters Trust, we're actually meeting a few Arsenal kind of officials this week, and it's not maybe on the agenda as such, but I think there probably needs to be more at Arsenal about kind of, how to report things and stuff. I think there is a text number. So if so say someone is in front of you and they're doing something you kind of don't approve of, and that could be racial abuse, that could be, I don't know, having a beer at the stands, which is, you feel uncomfortable with, or I don't know, just doing something, that they shouldn't be doing, which is kind of against the rules. To actually go to a steward and tell a steward, it's quite, a lot of people won't do that, because, they worry for themselves. I don't know, if you're with your own children, or maybe elderly parents or grandparents, you may not just want the hassle, but you may still feel passionate about it. And I think there is a text number that you can text, kind of the row and seat number, and it's kind of anonymous and stuff like that. I just think there probably needs to be more of that, and that needs to be advertised a little bit more as well, that people should feel safe when they come to football. And I think the more you have examples of people kind of, sort of digging out other people and kind of, kind of highlighting it to people when others are being wrong, and the more you get, the more that happens, I think people will maybe potentially stop doing it if the punishment's harsh enough. That guy that threw the banana skin, he's obviously been caught, he's been banned from football. Yeah, I'm not sure someone else is going to throw a banana skin again. So it's kind of that.
And to be fair, he was outed by his own fans.
Well, exactly, and that's what that's great, because let's be honest, we have banter with Spurs, and we certainly when the 90 minutes are on, we don't like them. We've all been brought up as Arsenal fans not to like Tottenham, but at the end of the day, they're human beings. And I have some mates that are Spurs fans, and we always have a great laugh. And talking to them after the game, none of them wanted that. None of them agreed with that. Mm-hmm. It can take one idiot to absolutely, like that train back from Norwich, one Arsenal fan. The reason why a lot of us moved from that carriage was because of that reason. We're not a part of this. That's different. And it was the same with the Spurs fans that day.
Yeah. Well, good. Let's hope we shine that spotlight a little more often. So, looking forward, we got Karabag on Thursday. Is that right? Or Wednesday? What day is it?
Yes, Thursday. You wrote
Thursday.
And then we turn right around and play on Saturday. So
Sunday.
Oh, is it Sunday? Yeah. Gosh, what day am I thinking of?
I've got no idea what you're talking about.
I don't know.
You can me here.
You've
obviously spent the day at the golf course and been in the clubhouse.
That's what's true. I've lost a day. Mentally, I'm just not with it.
Yeah.
So, a couple games coming up. One doesn't really matter much. We'll probably see a whole new 11. What are your predictions, Chloe, for that game as well as the weekend with Southampton?
Yeah, see, I was mulling this over earlier because it's not come as naturally to me as perhaps other games more recently. But it's really important that we still see Thursday as important, even if we've got a completely different lineup stepping out. And I'd like to think that we're going to nick it 1-0.
Okay.
Southampton, I think it's probably going to be 3-1 to Arsenal, because I'm not convinced that we'll keep a clean sheet, but I think we'll be up for it. And if players have been rested on Thursday and then play Sunday, they've had a nice little break and they'll put that extra energy to good use.
Yeah, all right. Let's see. Karabag for me, I don't know what's going to happen there because we're probably going to start some players that haven't seen a lot of minutes, but we probably have enough quality to carry us through. Southampton, I agree with Chloe, probably not going to keep a clean sheet given our suspensions and injuries, but I'll go with a 3-2 to the Arsenal there. So, Akhil, that leaves you.
I will go 2 or 3-0 on Thursday night. I think what Unai Emery has done is he's shown and he's shown with examples that if you play well in training and on the pitch for Arsenal, you will get your chances. So I think a lot of the younger players who will play in the cups will know that if they can play well, they'll get a chance in the league. So I think because of that, we'll see 2 or 3. I'm looking forward to seeing Smith Rowe again. Always do. Joe Willock potentially. Eddie might get a game up front as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. And I don't know if you when you listen to the Jeremy Adair podcast, but he was talking about it as well, that sometimes you knew that the only games you would play are the League Cup games. And it was more around shine. I mean, the season we got to the final where Jeremy had a great, year, it was more because he knew he was going to leave, shop window, stock was higher, that kind of stuff, rather than knowing that if I play well here, I'll break into the team. I think he sort of knew he wouldn't, whereas these players aren't, which is kind of why I think we'll do okay on Thursday. And then Sunday, I will go 3-1 Arsenal as well. I think, a week off will help a lot of these players. I think some of them were looking a bit heavy-legged. So let's go 3-1.
3-1. All right. Well, I think that'll wrap it up for us. Thank you once again for listening to the Gooner Ramble. I'd like to thank Chloe for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. And Akhil, send us off.
Yeah, well, up the Arsenal.